TransTrenders and Bistraightuals. Alright, it's the current year, and if you haven't heard, you aren't a cool queer person if you aren't trying to claim some sort of transgender identity. If you think that you are queer but defined as cis, I'm really sorry to tell you, but you're not queer enough. You have to try harder, apparently. But that's not really all that hard to do because there's like 76 genders, so you can take your pick. Obviously, this can't last forever. And so, to combat this, a new term has been invented called TransTrenders, which is used to make fun of these people who are most likely inventing gender identities and pronouns that they are going to completely regret in a few years when they want to pretend it never happened. Kind of like all your high school pictures of yourselves when you had like ridiculous MySpace emo hair, or my favorite Candy Raver pictures from the 90s. Now, the term transtrender actually came from the trans community. Like, the people who coined this term are generally people who have actually done something to transition. Like, they take hormones and often get surgeries and stuff. Usually, in order to do such things, you have to also get officially diagnosed by a doctor as having gender dysphoria, which is a real thing. It means you are legitimately feeling like you don't want to be seen as the gender that you were assigned at birth. Most TransTrenders, however, don't transition at all, and many of them don't even really want to be classified as the opposite gender that goes against their genitals. I would say most TransTrenders are self-diagnosed as non-binary. They use the pronoun they, them, and theirs, and they think gender is a social construct, and they tend to be the most easily offended when you misgender them. Granted, I generally try to respect their pronouns in everyday conversations as long as they aren't being a total jerk about it on the internet and politicizing their identity relentlessly, or attempting to attack me with it as leverage in the attack. Which definitely happens. But usually I try to be really cool about it because there's no reason to make people upset for both of our sake. Also, there legitimately are a lot of people who have a long process of transitioning and aren't completely sure what they are, who decide to transition after a period of defining as non-binary or whatever. And oftentimes these people are actually pretty nice about it. Long story short, there are many complex gender identities that are fairly reasonable once you hear the explanation. But I find that people who are legitimately complicated with their gender fluidity or whatever for good reasons are generally self-aware enough not to be complete assholes all the time. Problem is, there's a huge amount of people that are not nice about it. Honestly, a lot of these people basically use it as an excuse to freak out regularly, like it's fun for them. Honestly, I mostly feel bad for them at this point because everybody is getting so tired of them and they don't even really know it. They are all so incredibly intent on filtering out the entire majority of the world that they legitimately believe that they are the in crowd and that everybody else just doesn't get it because we are ignorant. They think that people just haven't read enough feminist blogs explaining these arbitrary gender identifications, and if they only did, then everybody would cater to their demands. They sit around in their little circles, potlucks and such, sticking to only going to queer parties that are designated to be safe spaces, generally safe only for them, and they are beyond cliquish. If somebody disagrees with them about anything on social media, they immediately attack them for their identity and block them. At this point, there's probably a greater number of people that these people can't even see, simply from all the blocking, than there are in their extended social network. They have absolutely no idea that Steven Crowder has an entire regular segment on his Louder with Crowder radio show called Guess the Gender or whatever, basically mocking these people by finding a gender on Tumblr or whatever and asking his guests what they think it means. And not that I even like him. I just think it's funny that guys who are so conservative have the TransTrenders numbers down so thoroughly. It's like when Fox News started having trigger warnings. As a joke, of course. This is heading in a very bad direction. I try to warn these kids on the internet all the time. This is what happens. The TransTrender posts somewhere where I can read it, like in the comment section or something. I just can't with cis people. I'm so glad they will be weeded out of the gene pool within 30 years. It's really interesting that you hate cis people so much and you are so delusional about evolution. Do you realize that most people don't actually really have a problem with trans people as long as they aren't being total jerks? Oh, we have a dude here, ready to explain everything to us. Rejoice! Look, bro, every cis person is transphobic. I'm persecuted constantly for being trans. Yeah, but where? I don't mean to be rude, but you aren't visibly trans. You look like a cis woman with short hair. See, you're misgendering me, which proves my point. So your point is that you are horribly oppressed because gay guys can't tell you are trans by looking at your profile photo on the internet. Oh, thanks so much for telling me about my life and experiences. I'm so glad I have a man here to explain to me exactly how I feel. Wow, that was mature. This does not end well for you. You'll be really embarrassed in a few years that you acted like this. This doesn't end well for me? Was that a threat? I am categorizing this as a threat of cyberbullying. If you say anything to me ever again, I'm calling the cops. Now, the reason I feel qualified to criticize these people is because I remember the 90s. I grew up in the inner city of a particularly progressive place where it was actually kind of trendy to be gay, or at least sorta gay. And we basically had the same thing. Only then, it was people who were pretending to be bisexual, because nobody really knew any trans people, so that was as far as they were willing to go. So it was considered cool and edgy to be queer, and there were all sorts of women who went around saying they were bisexual, and even some dudes. But a seriously high amount of them weren't bi. And I know a lot of people think bisexuality is a gateway drug to homosexuality, but most of these people were actually straight. They were just claiming to be bi, to be cool, but they never had sex with other men. Or they were taking a lot of Molly at raves and found it fun to make out with everybody. But it didn't last long. They were, as we called them then, Bistraightuals. It was legitimately a phase for so many of these people. And once George W. Bush got into office and Eminem became popular, practically everybody in America started saying, "That's gay," as a negative. And everybody who was like this stopped saying they were bisexual. It was all over. And it was influenced directly by culture and fashion, which is always influenced by politics. Do you want to know the weirdest part? Some of these people even became conservatives and or full-blown religious homophobes. I can imagine some of them decided that since their own experimentations with making out with dudes didn't turn them gay, that everybody else must have been faking it like they were. It was beyond frustrating, seriously. The Bush years was a really aggravating time to be a gay dude on the internet because of the backlash from the Bistraightuals alone. Not to mention that the Bush years just kind of sucked. So I have a message for TransTrenders. First off, I just want to say that you probably know who you are. I'm not going to name any names because it's mean, though I might show some photos. Regardless, if you have no intent on ever transitioning besides maybe a slight curiosity on what it might possibly be like, could you just stop it? You aren't fooling anybody, and you are both embarrassing and delegitimizing people who don't have a choice like you do. Not to mention embarrassing yourselves. Some people feel they have to transition or they would want to kill themselves. Some people have already undergone months or years of hormones and can't really just turn back. When people talk about bathroom laws, they aren't worried about people like Blair White, Theron Meyer, or even Caitlyn Jenner. These people make an effort to appear as the gender they were not assigned at birth. What people really fear is this new stereotype of the blue-haired freak with a beard that says they are a woman, or a red-haired, body-positive feminist who claims to be sort of a man, using the bathroom with their kids. Truthfully, I don't even think these people are legitimately scared that these blue-haired freaks are going to molest their daughters. I think, really, they just don't want their daughters anywhere around them. Or maybe not even that. Maybe when conservatives watch videos by people like Dakota the gender terrorist, they just hate that person and want to vindictively pass laws to discourage such behavior. Because honestly, it's kind of just madness and you have to admit that. Regardless of whether Dakota is a transtrender or not, I don't know. Anyhow, I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section. I totally do. And if you simply agree with me, then give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.